Money in the Bank qualifiers, a new tribal chief, Paul Heyman, brutally attacked. All of this and more on this week's episode of Friday Night SmackDown. Let's dive in. This is About Last Night. Well, hey, thank you so much for stopping by Rumble Rewind today. My name is Brandon. We're going to dive into this episode of Friday Night SmackDown. But before we do me a quick favor. Scroll down below this video. Hit that like button for me. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're down there. We are pushing for our first 200 subscribers. We are officially over halfway there. A small channel trying to grow this thing so we can keep creating content like this, and every like and subscribe helps us to do just that. Once we get to that first goal of 200 subscribers, we're going to be giving away some CM Punk merchandise. We're giving away a t-shirt and a hat. Would love for you to be eligible for that giveaway, and the only way to do that is to subscribe to the channel. If you want to stay up to date with all the information regarding that giveaway and make sure you never miss an upload from Rumble Rewind, make sure you turn on those post notifications as well. Well, hey, let's dive right into this episode of SmackDown. Typically, we do full episode recaps and reviews, but I want to try something a little different today and see if it works going forward. And that's to just kind of focus on three big things. We'll talk about other notable things as well, but the big three for me, the top three this week in SmackDown. First up, let's talk about what I think was the match of the night. And it was one of our Money in the Bank qualifiers. It's Tiffany Stratton in a triple threat match against Jade, Cargill, and Candice LeRae. Now, early in the match, Nia Jax would come out to ringside in an attempt to help Tiffany pick up the win. Bianca would be shortly behind her to try and even the odds. And while the two of them were preoccupied, it's actually Indy Hartwell that snuck in and threw Jade face first into the outside ring post. This allowed Candice LeRae to attempt to get the win, but it backfired and Tiffany Stratton would pick it up and qualify for Money in the Bank. Now here's the deal. Tiffany's been my pick for women's Money in the Bank winner since King and Queen of the Ring. As soon as she was eliminated from that tournament, I kind of figured that she was the heir apparent to the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think Tiffany's character is going to play this really, really well, and she is going to be telling an interesting story with that Money in the Bank case. Now, at one point, I did think that Jade was going to attempt to attack Nia, and it would lead to her hitting Bianca and that beginning some tension between the two of them, but that's not the direction it went. I do think that they're still sowing some seeds for a rivalry between the two down the road, but obviously Jade needs some more time in the ring first. Now, what's really interesting about this and why I chose it as the match of the night is because of its storyline potential going forward. You know, Nia and Tiffany's story is really continuing to build, and we know that Nia Jax has a title shot at SummerSlam. If you watch some of my previous videos, including this one here, I do think that Nia Jax is going to get the win and become the WWE Women's Champion at SummerSlam. Now, the only thing that could throw a wrench into that is Miss Money in the Bank, Tiffany Stratton. It's possible that she could cash in her Money in the Bank briefcase and turn that into a triple threat, get the win, and cause a lot of anger, some betrayal against Nia. Now, I do think, though, that the way it will go is Nia will win that championship and she will feel protected because of the alliance. I don't want to call it a friendship, because of the alliance with Tiffany. But I do believe down the road, Tiffany Stratton will betray Nia Jax and get the women's championship. But I do think that there could be a really cool, really fun rivalry between Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. And this is all kind of being set up by Tiffany possibly winning Money in the Bank. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't blow me up in the comments. I think Chelsea Green has a really good shot at becoming this year's Miss Money in the Bank as well. She's actually my number 2 pick. And I also have said before she would be great with the Money in the Bank briefcase as well. Either of them, if it's Tiffany, if it's Chelsea, I think it's going to be an incredible story. I do want one of those two women to walk out of Money in the Bank with the briefcase. Now, later in the week, we will have our official Money in the Bank preview and predictions video, but just kind of waiting through Raw tonight to make sure the match card is pretty well solidified. But tell me your thoughts on all of this about Money in the Bank. Do you think it's Tiffany Stratton? Do you think it's Chelsea Green? Do you think it's somebody else? What are your thoughts? How do you see this all playing out? Who do you see winning Money in the Bank? All right, moving on, my other two big events around the Bloodline, with number 2 being the show opener. We have the Bloodline coming to the ring, presumably for the advertised acknowledgement ceremony, but that would all change when Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton showed up. The 6 of them would brawl all over the ringside area until Nick Aldis and security would show up and shut it down. The Bloodline would return to the back, but the faces stayed in the ring. Security would attempt once again to remove them, but Cody, KO, and Randy Orton completely decimated the security team. Cody cut a promo about how he should be defending the title in Madison Square Garden and not dealing with the Bloodline. Again, Nick Aldis shows up, but this time with some of New York's finest, the police, and the trio peacefully exit the ring. They're escorted to their car and they leave the arena. Now, this was obviously a further development towards the 3-on-3 match that we're going to get at Money in the Bank, and it was really, really well done. The crowd was hot for this segment, and everybody involved delivered. The Bloodline guys delivered in the brawl. All of the faces delivered in the promo, and the beatdown on security was insane. Everybody hitting finishers, and security guards selling finishers like they're pro wrestlers. But Triple H did say recently that those security guys do make the best future superstar, so be on the lookout for security guy number 7 making his Raw debut right after Odyssey Jones. Anyway, there are a couple of things that are worth talking about here and some potential stories. Number 1, there was no Jacob Fatu. It was just Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Solo Sikoa. Heyman actually asked Solo where Jacob Fatu was, and Solo said he wasn't there. Solo said that he's been listening to Heyman because Heyman is his wise man now. And tonight, they would make that official. My first thought was, are they going to acknowledge Paul Heyman tonight? Is that what this ceremony is about? But stay tuned. Of note, Paul Heyman looked absolutely rough. I did read somewhere that he didn't sleep the night before just so that he could sell this. He is the 5 o'clock shadow. He's looking scruffy and gruff. His eyes are bloodshot. And you can tell that he's all in on this story, and he's selling it really, really well. Paul Heyman is doing an incredible job, and honestly, he is the star of this entire program. Back to the faces for just a minute. There was a spot where Randy Orton was eyeing up the title, the WWE Championship, and he does this every time. If Cody mentions the championship in Randy's presence, he has a reaction. And when Cody said he should be defending the title in Madison Square Garden, you could see the wheels turning in Randy Orton's head, thinking, I want that title shot. So I fully suspect that at some point in the nearer than later future, then we are going to get an RKO out of nowhere from Randy Orton to Cody Rhodes, and that's going to set up a big feud. Obviously, with SummerSlam as close as it is, we could go in that direction. I want it to have a little bit more time. Maybe it builds a Royal Rumble. I don't see it being WrestleMania because of Rock, Roman, Cody, all of that, but we'll see what happens. I would love to see this feud, but I would love to see it have time to develop and time to really tell the whole story. It's going to be awesome when it happens. But tell me your thoughts on this opening segment. I know many fans out there don't think that Solo can carry the story of the Bloodline, and I don't completely disagree. A lot of the story's success, like I said, is because of Paul Heyman and because of how well Paul Heyman is selling it. And that was true here. However, I do think that we're seeing Solo Sikoa continue to develop, and he's coming into the role more and more as it progresses. But let me know your thoughts on Solo and this chapter of the Bloodline story down in the comments below. All right, let's move on. In the top spot of the evening, we are right back to the Bloodline. They would return at the end of the night for this acknowledgement ceremony. Paul Heyman begins the segment, begins to cut a promo, but Solo interrupts him by holding out his hand for the microphone, much like Roman Reigns used to do. After some shock and hesitation, Heyman finally hands the mic over, and Solo begins his promo by saying, Madison Square Garden, acknowledge me. And at this moment, you can see the shock on Paul Heyman's face. He's shocked as Solo has truly begun to cross a line that there is no coming back from. That is Roman's thing. Solo is saying that he is the tribal chief now, and you can see the discomfort on Paul Heyman's face. Again, he's selling this so well. Now, right after this, Solo would introduce Jacob Fatu, who would make his entrance and come to the ring. Now, side note, I know Def Rebel gets a lot of hate for the music that they produce, but this one was absolute fire. The whole thing, the video package, the actual fire, the song, all of it was really well done. And kind of the Bloodline is getting hooked up on some themes. They all have really good theme songs. So Def Rebel, It's possible. You can do it. Just do it for Braun Breaker also, and everyone else who has bad themes. Moving on. Solo would go down the list of new Bloodline members, and each Bloodline member would step forward and acknowledge Solo as their tribal chief. Solo finally would demand that Heyman acknowledge him as the tribal chief, and even brought out Roman's Ulafala. Heyman looks legitimately terrified because I think at this point he's selling that he knows what's about to happen. He knows what is going to go down. And he takes the mic and he says, "I acknowledge that you are not my tribal chief." Solo immediately hits Heyman with the Samoan spike, and the other three attack him. Jacob Fatu hits Heyman with the top rope headbutt, and finally Solo watches as the other three members of the Bloodline hit Heyman with the triple powerbomb through the announce table. Solo finally puts on the Ulafala, and the show closes. Later, we would find out on social media that they would take Paul Heyman out in an ambulance, and man, I gotta say, that bump looked nasty. I know that many of us were shocked, myself included, that there were no big surprise returns here. No one came out to rescue Paul Heyman. There was no return of Roman Reigns, no Jimmy Uso, no Rock. All of these things were highly speculated and highly anticipated. But I actually ended up appreciating that there were no returns, that no one came to save Paul Heyman. Not because I'm a Paul Heyman hater, but because I'm a Paul Heyman sympathizer. Like, I want someone to rescue Paul Heyman. But this segment sold the whole Paul Heyman story in a way that had to happen. It made me feel even more sympathetic towards Paul Heyman. It made me feel even more that Paul Heyman was the face in all of this. A guy like Paul Heyman should not be able to turn face, and this was probably one of the biggest face turns that we've ever seen out of Paul Heyman. And he turned face by supporting somebody who's been a heel and supporting Roman Reigns. This is absolute, and I know this is a buzzword right now, but cinema. It was so well done. It was so well done. And Heyman rarely takes bumps like this. And I couldn't tell you the last time I saw him take a bump, especially one like this. But it makes it feel like a huge situation. It makes it feel like such a big deal when he does. And this was no different. Tonight, this story shifted into a new gear that we haven't seen out of the Bloodline since Roman Reigns left after WrestleMania. And I cannot wait. At this point, I cannot wait to see where the story continues to go and where we go from here towards this eventual conflict between Bloodline and Bloodline. I cannot wait. Now, obviously, Roman is going to come back and attempt to regain his spot at the head of the table. But tonight, it really made me wonder about The Rock and his involvement in all of this, where he fits. Now, many thought, and myself included, still kind of think The Rock was the one pulling the strings, and he was the one they've been referring to as the tribal chief when they say by orders of the tribal chief. But this really kind of throws a wrench in all of that. Does this put The Rock on the babyface side, or does it mean it's going to be 5-on-5 or 5-on-4 or whatever? How are we going to get from where we are to where we're headed? There are a lot of possibilities here. So The Rock and Roman could team up to take down the new Bloodline, but I just don't see that happening because there needs to be a feud between the two of them. They could get out of it and say at the end of it, we took down the old Bloodline, and then they could have this argument over who's the real tribal chief at this point. They could feud there. Obviously, The Rock could still be on the side of the new Bloodline, but Solo claiming that he is the tribal chief really complicates that, unless The Rock is trying to make Solo the tribal chief, which, knowing The Rock and his personality, I don't see that as part of the character that they would write for him. All in all, though, this segment absolutely cooked, and the truth is that Paul Heyman was the star of the whole thing. I mean, he sold it so well. Every little detail from Paul Heyman, his facial expressions, his reactions, his timing, it was so spot on, so perfect. This guy needs some sort of award. I don't know what it is because it's pro wrestling and not actual, TV show acting in the traditional sense, but he needs some sort of award, and I really hope that powerbomb didn't leave any lasting effects. Super impressed that he took it at all. I don't know that I would walk for a week if I was the one going through the table. But tell me your thoughts on the story so far, on where you see it going from here. Man, it's been an interesting couple of months since Roman left, but I really feel like this segment tonight has really put that Bloodline story back into one of the top spots for what stories we have going on in WWE. Now, like I said, there were some other notable things that happened on this episode. One, pretty deadly return to TV. Now, we did see a quick appearance by them at Clash Castle, but They returned to TV in a backstage segment involving the Street Profits, and it's really good to see them back. I hope that creative has plans for them. I don't know why they were gone, whether they were injured or just hanging out and catering, but I really hope that they get utilized. The tag team division could use that. It really could. SmackDown has kind of a secret, low-key, underrated but very strong tag team division, and Pretty Deadly is part of that. So hopefully we'll get to see more tag team wrestling and more stories involving those. And for real though, can we please get that Yes Boy the musical to happen sooner than later? Pick it up, someone. Let's go. Get it on Broadway or off Broadway or off Broad Street. I don't know. Anywhere. Also of note, Naomi and LA Knight did qualify for Money in the Bank. I didn't see either of those coming, honestly. I thought that Blair Davenport would get the win to just give her some momentum in her debut match. And I thought LA Knight and Logan Paul would actually cost each other the win. And it is worth stating that LA Knight pinned Logan Paul, so now he can say, oh, I pinned the United States champion. I want my title shot. And so maybe that's the story that they're telling. And honestly, I would be fine with LA Knight winning the men's Money in the Bank, but not if he cashes in on Logan Paul. I would be so disappointed. It made a little bit more sense when Theory cashed it in for the US title when Roman Reigns was the only world champion. But at this point, there are 2 world titles. One of them is not held by somebody who's had it for more than 1,000 days. And so I think cashing it in on a mid-card title would be just a creative nightmare that I, along with many other members of the IWC, would lash out against. Please don't put LA Knight in that position. Please don't have LA Knight cash in his Money in the Bank contract on Logan Paul. That said, I don't think LA Knight's going to win Money in the Bank, so let's just move on. Now, DIY versus A-Town Down Under for the tag team titles is going to happen next week on SmackDown. We did see a little bit more seeds of a breakup sown tonight, and I really hope they don't go that way. Like I said, SmackDown's tag team division is strong. A-Town Down Under is part of what makes that tag team division strong. Love to see them defending those titles or even wrestling as a tag team more often. I think it's too soon to break them up. There's not enough history to make it really, really high drama. They're trying to make it that way with Johnny Gargano getting involved and pulling on the heartstrings of his former relationship with Austin Theory, but it's just not working to the level that I think they hoped if they want to fast track this story. So I hope that they stay together, but we'll have to see. Again, they're defending those titles against DIY this Friday on SmackDown, so we'll see what happens from here. Let me know in the comments, though, do we see new tag team champions? We just got new tag team champions on Raw. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, hit that video right there and check it out. But do we get new tag team champions on SmackDown as well? Let me know your thoughts. All right, next week's SmackDown is the Money in the Bank Go Home show, and I expect some bigger developments in that Bloodline story. I don't really think that anybody's going to return. There is a 3-on-3 match between Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton versus the New Bloodline, and I'm not sure which 3 members it's going to be. Maybe we'll get a return or something, some big action at Money in the Bank, but I think it's really SummerSlam or the lead up to SummerSlam before we see some big returns or shocking must-see, can't-miss news. Overall, though, this show is really about Money in the Bank and solidifying that card and getting it locked in. Even the Bloodline stuff in the short term's about Money in the Bank with that 3-on-3 match that they've got going on. But overall, I will say that this was absolutely an amazing episode of SmackDown. I'd give it probably an 8.5 out of 10, but just because the kind of the middle of the show wasn't as hot as the beginning and the end. And Indy Hartwell, Blair Davenport, Naomi match was pretty clunky, kind of hard to watch, honestly, so that pulls it down just a little bit. But 8.5 out of 10 I think is fair. Let me know your thoughts. How would you rate this show? Down in the comments below. But this show really did make me look forward to Money in the Bank even more. Again, it was just a great show all around. And so I did enjoy it. But that brings us to Brand Wars. Which brand won the week? For me, I have to give the very, very slight edge to Monday Night Raw. To me, it comes down really to the Wyatt Six versus the Bloodline stories. And while the Bloodline story has been getting better and better, the truth is that the Uncle Howdy, Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotunda interview segment was just so good. It was truly next level stuff out of Taylor Rotunda. And man, he just did such a great job. If you want to know more of my thoughts on that, check out my Raw recap from last week. But again, it was very, very good. Expecting to get some more developments in that story on this upcoming episode of Raw. But for me, this segment in the Wyatt Six story gives the slight edge to Raw this week. SmackDown and NXT were both really great, not taking anything away from them, but Raw gets it this time in a very close race. But what were your thoughts on this week's episode of SmackDown, and what were the highlights for you? Did we get it right when I picked the top 3? Did we get it right in Brand Wars? If not, tell me who you would pick and why. Which brand do you think won the week? And let me know in the comments. While you're down there, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button for me and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember, we're giving away some CM Punk gear when we hit 200 subscribers, and now we're over halfway there. Help us keep pushing forward. Those likes, those subscribes, they mean a lot. They help us continue to make content like this, and we really, really appreciate each one of them. So make sure you turn on your post notifications as well so you never miss an upload. Thanks again for hanging out for a bit with me today on Rumble Rewind. We'll see you on the next one.